Welcome, everyone in the United States, Canada, and around the world to another episode of It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast of overcomers and useful information to better our daily life and mental spirit. I am your host, Ron Rapaport. I would like to thank all of our great listeners, viewers, supporters, and sponsors for making this podcast such a success. The podcast is being heard on all major platforms, podcast website, itsawrapwithrap.com, where you can find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and great products and services offered from our sponsors. The podcast can also be viewed on our YouTube channel, It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. My guest today is Brian Hite. Brian Hite PhD is an author, keynote speaker, performance and leadership consultant, stuntman, and stunt coordinator. Brian masterfully blends high-octane stunt work with intellectual rigor and the transformative power of sport performance psychology. Boasting over 100 film and TV credits, including a prestigious Screen Actor Guild Award, Brian brings a rich tapestry of experiences to every new endeavor. Holding a master's in sports psychology, a PhD in organizational psychology, and certified as a mental performance consultant, Brian is a recognized authority on human potential. His expertise is highly sought after by a wide variety of people, ranging from the U.S. military to his doctoral students at Grand Canyon University. As the founder of Brian Hite Global, Begin Again Performance Psychology, and co-host of the podcast Poking Holes in Blinders, Brian captivates audiences with electrifying storytelling and actionable insights. His keynote addresses transcend industries, offering fresh perspectives on resilience, performing under pressure, risk-taking, and developing and maintaining motivation even under the most challenging times. His infectious passion inspires others to embrace the unknown and push beyond limits. A published author, his book, Begin Again, utilized the wisdom of Eastern and Western ideologies to achieve your full potential, blends ancient wisdom with modern practicality, while his book, The Change, Volume 21, details Brian's approach to resilience and the importance of awareness, acceptance, and action. In a world requiring physical and mental resilience, Brian Hite stands as a beacon of inspiration, reminding us that our overall well-being emerges from embracing life's journey with courage and curiosity. Welcome, Brian, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure. Tell us how early in your life you were involved in the athletic and performance arena, and currently, are you still involved in it?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's probably a better question for my parents, because I think I've been physically active in many, many ways, unofficially as much as officially. I played my first sport at 7. That was soccer. That's when I actually got involved in official organized athletics. And then moved from soccer. Well, I didn't move from. I added baseball to the list. So I was playing soccer and baseball. Took a little turn with wrestling for a little bit. That didn't take. Basketball, I tried for a season. That didn't take either. But soccer and baseball did. And I played both all the way through high school and really enjoyed that. I wanted to play football, but my mom would not let me play football. She was afraid I was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So
a lot of mothers are relate to that.
Well, I'll tell you, and at the time I was pretty upset about it. But now with all the research coming out with CTE and the head injuries and just the damage that can happen from that repetitive head trauma, I have to thank her. I have to say, all right, Mom, you were right. I was wrong on this one.
Yeah, no football, but being a stuntman, no problem.
Well, there it is. It's you got to get the hits somewhere, Yeah. But yeah, so I've been involved in athletics since I was 7 in terms of official. College, I didn't play anything, but I did drive around every weekend during football season to just look for football games that I could just get in. If I saw a football game, I would stop and like, hey, you guys got an odd number? Can I play? So I would do that. Always loved sports. And then got into stunts when I was in college. I was 20 when I started doing that. That was at a live show at Six Flags in New Jersey.
Yep. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
Yeah. And I've been going ever since. I'm still doing stunts. I'm not really playing any sports anymore, but other than with the kids, I do have a dirt bike that I ride.
Okay. That's
during that season. But
that's fun.
Yeah. So that's it.
Now you worked first as a stuntman touring with a live show. how did you get interested, first of all, in being a stuntman? And please tell us about the types of stunts you perform currently and in what venues are you performing them?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I got started. It wasn't a touring show that I did right off the bat. The Batman show was at Six Flags in New Jersey. And I was going to college at Rutgers, which was also in New Jersey, it's still there. It's still there. And then I had a company manager of the Batman show. He was a friend of mine from earlier on, different things in Nashville. And he got me some tickets to the park, and I went in and I saw the show and was just floored. I can't even describe the feeling that I had when I was watching the show. It started with this big, huge explosion, and then motorcycles came jumping out of this thing, and I just was captivated. And that was it. I was able to go backstage and talk to the people, and I asked them, first question, how do you get to do this job? What do you have to do? How do I get it?
Did you say to yourself as a kid, when you saw that, did you say to yourself in your mind, I can do that?
Yeah. It looked like so much fun to me what they were doing. I didn't know how, obviously, when I was watching the show.
Right.
I had no experience on a motorcycle. And then the other things that they told me I needed to learn how to do were fights and high falls. And I hadn't done anything with those either. But one of the guys from the show trained me in fights and high falls. And I bought a dirt bike and just started practicing. Went to the audition, got the job, and did that the next summer. And then the summer after that, and then moved to LA. But I didn't graduate from college. I
didn't graduate from Rutgers.
I did graduate from Rutgers, but not then. I had to go back later.
Okay.
I was so enamored with stunts that was all that took my mind, and I just didn't want to. I just couldn't focus, and I was failing everything. And somehow or another, I made it through the first semester of the senior year without failing everything. But second semester, I'm telling you, it was F's all the way. So I just had to withdraw. So I left Rutgers with one semester to go, no degree, to move to LA to be a stuntman. Wow. The pride of every parent, right?
Yeah.
Drop out of college, move across the country to do stunts.
I know some people that's happened to where they go and they got like maybe 6 months left and then they just leave.
Yeah, but well, that's what I did. I don't think it was a great idea. It's not advice that I would give to anybody.
Right.
But for me, it was just so hard to focus. Because the thing is, I went to college trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was trying to find where I fit and what I wanted to do, and I couldn't. I hadn't found that yet until I saw that show. And when I found that, I said, yes, that's it. That's what I want. And it required nothing to do with college. So
exactly.
I was like, all right, well, the only reason I'm here is to find what I would do when I grow up, and I found it, and it doesn't need this school, then whatever. I don't want to go to class.
Really?
But I did end up obviously going back and getting the bachelor's, and then, like you said, more with the master's and the PhD, but that was all later.
Yeah. Now, what was your favorite, craziest stunt or experience you encountered? I'm just curious.
Well, two things come to mind with that one, but for different reasons, for completely different reasons. One was on a movie called Drive Angry, and it's a Nicolas Cage movie, and at the end, I don't know, I guess it's at the end of it. I don't really remember where in the movie, but this car driven by Nicolas Cage, which it wasn't, it was a stuntman, but whatever, jumps over the wall, crashes through burning cross, and now the car lands in this compound with a bunch of crazy people, of which I was one. And the car, now on fire, just drives around hitting people, and the people are crazy, so they're trying to tackle the car. So the stunt that I did was the car's on fire, and I went running toward the car, dove to tackle the car, slid through the fire. Now I'm on fire, hit the windshield, went up and over the car, and then landed on the other side and got put out. So that was one. So it was a combination of a car hit, which is already its own big thing, and a burn, which is also its own big. So it was a combination of two pretty big stunts together. So that was a lot of fun. The other doesn't sound like much, and it certainly didn't look like much on the screen, but the way that it happened, I'll never forget. It was on a TV show called Numbers, and I was doubling a guy, and I was running across a roof, and I had to jump up on this ledge. It was maybe, it wasn't high. It was maybe 2.5 feet, and the ledge was probably, I don't know, maybe a foot wide. So not a hard jump and not that small an area to land on, but it was 50 feet above the concrete. And if I missed it or caught a toe or leaned the wrong direction or something, I was going down. There was nothing to catch me. I wasn't attached to a wire. There was nothing.
Wow.
So so that one again, and I could have been attached to a wire. That's something the stunt coordinator could have done, was to make it a little bit safer, but that's not what happened. So on that one, and I did it, I don't know, 2-3 times, run across the roof, jump up on this thing, and then stand there with my arms out like a cross while they were shooting it from down below.
That's just amazing. I mean, you had no net, nothing.
No, there was nothing. If screwed that one up, it would have been a big mess at the
Right.
bottom
So,
for sure.
yeah. Any injuries? Have you suffered any injuries from doing any of these stunts?
No, nothing with
Knock
stunts
on wood,
really.
I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. It was. I mean, I guess I was doing this was a touring show. It was a Spider-Man live touring show with different Broadway theaters, and I ended up spraining my ankle very, very badly on that one. I had to take a couple months off for that to heal. But other than that, just bumps, bruises, scrapes, things like that. Nothing
It's
really
minor
serious to
stuff.
speak of.
How did you develop to thrive and flourish in spite of the obvious high risk of doing dangerous stunts before, during, and after performing? Like, for example, you just mentioned you were on that ledge 50 feet from the concrete. Obviously, if you would have, something would have happened bad, you weren't going to make it. I mean, 50 feet
No.
on the concrete is not going to, you're not coming out of that. But, how do you get your mind to just do what you got to do, knowing that there is that big risk?
Yeah, that is an interesting question. And for most of my career, I didn't really have a systematic way of doing that. I do now, and it's something that I train athletes to do and I train business people to do. It's
Right.
a 4-phase approach to performance.
Right.
But that was kind of developed and figured out over time. I guess the easiest way to describe it is the stuff requires such intense focus
Yeah.
and attention that, and it was just fun. And I think that really helped. The fact that I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed I enjoyed all of it, and still do. I still do. I still enjoy all of it. And that joy helped bring me into the moment and allowed me to stay in the moment. And in other words, stay focused on the things I needed to do in order to succeed, rather than what you're talking about, which is, wow, if I screw this up, I'm going to end up a grease mark on the concrete down below. So you're focusing on that. Now you got all kinds of nervousness, anxiety, stress. Your attention's not at all where it needs to be, and that's bad. But for me, I believed I could do the stunts. I believed I could do them well, and I looked forward to that challenge. I looked forward to the opportunity every single time I got it. And I think that approach, that attitude that I was able to take, I think that's what kept me going in the early parts of my career. Now, as I progressed 5, 10, 15 years in, I started to think through, well, what am I doing? I mean, how is this process working? And especially, and then it really came to fruition when I started working with the military as a sport performance psychology consultant, because we were thinking about, okay, so how do we train this to them? Like, here's what I did. Let me just talk through my experience with you guys. There was some colleagues and I sitting around. And we talked through it, and we came up with this 4-phased approach, and it got published in a sports psychology journal back in, 2010, 2011. But that approach emerged from the musings and just the analysis of how I approached those stunts throughout the years. And really it did. It's about maintaining the right energy activation level, being aware of where your attention is and where it needs to be, being able to recover from distractions, being able to regulate, manage emotions, all of those things. And so again, it early on, I don't know, I was just kind of,
I think early on, it sounds like you were kind of just winging it.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that it was that joy, that pleasure that, I mean, when
did you get an adrenaline rush out of that?
Yeah. There's an adrenaline rush, but you have to manage it. There's, for example, there's a right amount of energy activation for any given performance that we're doing. And if we're talking about a stunt, if it's a fight scene, maybe it's a little bit lower energy activation level because there are a lot of movements, a lot of, like tighter muscle movements that are required. Whereas falling down the stairs, for example, maybe that's higher level of energy activation because you're just going to hit and you need to pump up, or at least I do. And that's the thing, is that energy activation level is unique to each of us. So if you and I are about to do the exact same thing, you may have one level of energy activation at which you perform very well, and I have a different one, and that's okay. whatever's right for us is right, but we have to know what that right energy activation level is, and we have to know how to get to it and stay there. And that's really where the trick is, because as you do, you're in this situation. The stakes are high,
Right.
not even just the physical stakes, although that can be the case sometimes, but there's a lot of money at stake. If you're working on a film set, I mean, there are things blowing up and cars wrecking and motorcycles
Oh, yeah.
smashing. All this stuff costs a bunch of money, and you get to do it once, usually, because everything's
Yeah.
blown up and smashed.
Right.
So you screw it up, you're really, and I've done that, by the way. I was on Hawaii 5-0, and we were doing a final rehearsal for this motorcycle stunt where I was on action. I was crashing through some doors of this building. I started inside the building, crashed through the doors, rode down some steps, came across the sidewalk, and then out in the street. And then they shot a gun and some pyro went off on the back of the motorcycle, and I slid and wrecked. Well, while we were rehearsing that, the final rehearsal, I wrecked, but I did not wreck the way I was supposed to wreck. And I wasn't supposed to wreck at all because it was rehearsal. And I broke the motorcycle to the point where they couldn't do the shot. This was on a Friday. They had to bring everybody back the next day. They had to buy a new motorcycle, paint it to look like the first motorcycle, and bring the entire crew back for me, for my screw up that I had. So I cost that production a bunch of money. They were not happy with me. So it happens, mistakes occur.
Right.
But even
right.
then, I mean, so I'm back on this. That was one of the most challenging moments that I had, because I did screw up the first time. Everybody knew it. I had to get back on the motorcycle. I was it. I was the thing happening in that shot.
Right.
Everybody was looking at me, and I had to figure out a way to stay centered. But at that point, I had gone through some of the training. I'd gone through my graduate programs. I'd applied these things more systematically. I'd had the discussions with the Army. So I had some tools that I could lean on in those moments, in that moment in particular, to keep my attention where it needed to be. And the gag, it went great. The stunt went exactly the way it was supposed to. The producer, who was ready to throw me off a roof the day before, was very happy, came over, shook my hand. So, it turned out okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that right amount of energy activation is important, because that adrenaline rush can take over, and it can skew our attention, and it can screw up our physiology. If we need to be able to move our bodies, you can't do it. So
How did you
be able to control it?
How did you become or develop a passion for performance or sports psychology? And who exactly do you mentor? As I have read, you have worked with the military. Tell us about that.
Well, my beginning with sports psychology came when I was coaching gymnastics. So when I first started doing stunts, one of the things that I did to make a little bit extra money and to have a free place to train was coach kids in a gymnastics gym. And I'd never done gymnastics as a kid, so I was learning from the other coaches. I started just coaching the rec kids, and then I'd learn from other coaches. I went to conferences, and I, little by little, built up the skills of what I could coach. And as I learned new things to coach, I learned how to do them myself. So I got to the point where I could do some pretty good gymnastics. And while at one point during that, I was coaching a team. I was coaching girls. They were level 5, 6 girls, and I was coaching primarily bars and vault. And I'd go to meets with them, and I'd watch these girls at practice, and they'd be able to do the things. They were physically capable of doing the skills. But then when I would get to the meet, some of them would go over and above. Some of them would just, they would just lock in, and they would hit the routines in a way that I'd never seen at practice. And others who hit the routines regularly in practice would fall. They'd be all over the place. And there was no other reason for it, no other thing that I could think of other than just their minds. So I started reading about sports psychology and just became fascinated with that subject. And I just thought, all right, well, this is really cool. I want to learn more. And so that's why I started the master's program, and then continued on with a doctoral program in organizational psychology, which is essentially performance psychology for businesses. It's the same thing. Just how do you get people to be at their best consistently?
Okay.
But I never expected to work in those fields. I was a stuntman. That's what I did. That's what I expected to do for the rest of my life. But, life does what it does. And I got married, and that came with a stepdaughter. And stunts it's volatile. It's uncertain. You never know when you're going to work or how much money you're going to make. And that made me nervous. So that's when I started looking for a full-time job. And that's when I started working for the Army up at Fort Lewis in Washington. And it was a great job. It was, at the time, traditional sports psychology. It was performance based. we focused on helping soldiers shoot better or clear buildings better or find IEDs better, whatever it might be. It was, okay, this is our performance. We want to get better, faster, and be more consistent. So how can you help us? And that's what I did. I did that for 2 years. I got a divorce, went back to LA, did stunts again for, full time for another 4 or 5 years or so. Rinse and repeat, got married. That came with a stepdaughter again and my daughter at that point.
Yeah.
So same reason, went back to the Army again, this time at Fort Campbell outside Nashville, where I'm originally from and am now. So it was a circuitous route to get back, but I came back home. So I was at Fort Campbell. And at that time, though, this is a thing that's, I don't know, I'm really thankful that it happened. The program had changed. It still had the performance focus, but it had added a resilience component. And the difference was same theory, same basic techniques, but the intent was different. The resilience piece was, what can we teach these soldiers? What tools or skills or techniques can we give them that will allow them to handle adversity better when it inevitably comes up? I mean, whoever you are, wherever you are, something bad's going to happen. It's just, that's part of life.
Right.
So how do we come back from that? How do we build that resilience? How do we allow ourselves to go through those moments and not only not get down that far, not only recover quicker, but most importantly, and this is one of the things that the program emphasized that I really got on board with huge, how do we grow and thrive as a result of that adversity? Going through the bad thing, how do I come out of it on the other side better than I went into it?
Right.
And that to me is so important. So I went headfirst into that side of the program and did a lot of those trainings around the world, really, and really got a lot out of that. And so that was a great experience that I had with the soldiers. And then I left there about two and a half years ago to start my own business and start doing the same thing with a broader audience, with athletes, performers, business people, really anybody who is at a place in their life where they know there's more and they just want to learn, they want to grow, they want to strengthen themselves, or parents who want to provide that for their kids.
Right.
And it's been really rewarding. I really enjoy it.
And we're glad to have you on this podcast, because that's pretty much what this podcast is all about, is just helping people out there listening, how they can get through these struggles, these life challenges and adversities. Now, you create your own business, Brian Hite Global, Begin Again Performance Psychology. That, I believe, is the name of the business, correct?
Yeah, there are two. I have Begin Again Performance Psychology is what I created when I first left the Army, and it's still there. And there's a focus on sport performance psychology, not necessarily traditionally, but it's really toward that population. Brian Hite Global is a larger effort that I've just started putting together this year that does more speaking engagements.
Okay.
I still have some programs that I offer for organizations, for athletes, for coaches, for whomever. Books that I'm trying to create. There will be some courses that I'm developing in 2025, should be out probably either the middle to the end of 2025.
The podcast guest and author, Marcia Moran, has written an incredible read titled Stroke Forward: How to Become Your Own Healthcare Advocate, One Step at a Time. On March 30th, 2014, Marcia's whole world changed as she suffered a stroke at age 53. If you are someone who is a patient with a serious brain injury looking for hope and insights into ways to keep moving forward, or a family member or friend who has been thrust into the role of guarding over someone with a brain injury, you will discover that you are not alone in your quest to be the best caregiver you can be. The book is stroke specific, but the author's advice has many applications with added perspectives included in the text of the book from healthcare providers, Marcia herself, Marcia's husband, and friends. The book is more than just a book about stroke or victims of it. It is a story of bravery, love, and resilience. Holding a master's in business administration, Marcia has written over 50 business plans and created value by strategizing how companies could remain relevant as the world changed around them. When her stroke turned her world upside down, she applied her planning and strategy skills to become whole. Her journey of learning to become her own healthcare advocate, one step at a time, is shared in the book and will benefit everyone reading the book trying to navigate the healthcare complex. This book is a rare combination of intimate personal experience, medical education, and practical advice. The book is available from Amazon in paperback and ebook formats. Information on the book will be listed in the podcast notes.
I have some courses on motivation, on pressure, on the four-phased approach to performance I was telling you about. So that's kind of the difference. So I've moved out of the specific sport and performance realm into just a larger place of, okay, just everybody experiences pressure. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom and you've got 3 kids and you got to deal with homework and you got to deal with dinner and you got to deal with soccer. How do you do that? That's a lot of pressure that a lot of people experience. How do we handle that? How do we look at our situation in a way that we can be at our best and accomplish all that we can throughout those high stakes, high stress situations? And I really enjoy that. I enjoy talking about it and I enjoy coaching it. And I really enjoy just seeing the change that people can make when they implement these skills.
So you're coaching your clients. What do you focus on coaching them to achieve their goals or outcomes? In other words, can you kind of tell us a little bit about the process that needs to take place?
Yeah, well, it starts with self-awareness, and that's what it comes down to. We have to be aware of how are we thinking? What types of thoughts are going on in our minds? What's going on physically with us? Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating healthily? Are we exercising, stretching? Emotionally, what are we feeling? And how strongly are we feeling it? And when we feel it, do we know that we're feeling it? And can we regulate it? Can we manage it? And then socially, do we have friends? How often do we connect with people? What's our support system look like? And that's where we start it's a holistic approach, physical, mental, emotional, social, that we start with self-awareness. Let's talk about what those things are. And then let's talk about where you want them to be, because then we can start looking at an acceptance of, okay, here's reality. This is where I currently am. Physically, I'm not where I want to be. Mentally, I have a tough time regulating, managing my thoughts. I tend to go very pessimistic. I tend to perceive things as problematic all the time. Emotionally, I'm very volatile. I'm all over the place. Socially, I'm isolated. I don't have a support system. Great. Okay. So that's fine. That's where you are. It's not good. You want to be somewhere else, and that's great. But this is where you are. And this is what I mean by acceptance. It's not acceptance as in, all right, this is it. I accept it. This is my life. So this is just, I don't know. I just got to be okay with it. It's not acceptance like that. It's acceptance of, let me just not gloss over it. Let me not make stuff up. Let me not pretend like, the camel is a unicorn. It's not. Things are what they are. So let's just accept that reality as a place of beginning and move from there. And that's when we can get into the self-regulation part. What are the tools? What are some changes that we can make physically? What are some different ways that we can manage and control and really perceive situations differently and think differently? And how might we achieve an emotional state that's really helpful for us in situations, and do that on demand and recognize very quickly when we start to move out of that emotional state, so that we don't go down the rabbit hole. We don't let it go so far that it's just almost impossible to come back. We're able to catch it very quickly and have some tools and techniques to bring us back to where we want to be. That's the process.
Is there a spiritual component to this?
There can be, if people look into that. Now, when I talk about spiritual aspects with people, what I talk about is, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be religion, and I don't really start it as religion. It's more of a sense that we're part of something larger than ourselves, that there's a bigger thing out there of which we interact with, that we're a part of. And I think that sense of connectedness to something larger, something bigger, can be very helpful for people. Now, some people push back on that because they've got whatever baggage it is that they're carrying with whatever they've come up with in their lives. But some people really benefit from it. So if I'm working with somebody and it seems like that kind of perspective, that kind of appreciation for for I guess I think of it as the smallness of us in the universe,
Yeah.
but the importance of us in the sense that the universe would not be what it was or is without us. It would be different. It would be something else. So it's
Okay.
that connectedness to something larger. So that's when I talk about spirituality, that's where I go with it.
Okay. Now you mentioned five categories, and I guess the goal of all this is to improve confidence, would you say?
Well, confidence can be a big part of it. I would say that it's just it's about consistency of
Doing things on a
it's
consistent
it's
basis.
developing the ability to be aware
Yeah.
and to be accurate in our assessment of what it is that's happening. Because if we're not capable of doing that, if our perceptions of the situation are being colored by inaccurate beliefs, or for example, maybe I'm very self-conscious. Like I'll go out in a group and I think everybody's thinking badly about me. I'm self-conscious about my clothes. They're thinking about my clothes. They're going to talk about my hair. They're going to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so that's my belief. I'm thinking everybody's paying attention to me. Well, you and I have been on this earth long enough to know ain't nobody paying any attention to us. They're
No,
too busy thinking about themselves. So,
exactly.
so
Exactly.
so but people get very, very caught up in that. And if that's something that's happening, well, let's be aware of it. Let's be aware that that's our tendency to really put a lot of weight and really believe strongly that there's judgment coming from everybody we meet. If that's our tendency, we need to know that so that we can then challenge that belief. All right, well, you think that's true? Well, what's the evidence for that? How do you know? I mean, truly, how do you know? And might there be another way to explain somebody's behavior or somebody's look? If somebody says something to you, you take it as they're attacking you. Well, is there another way to take that? There are myriad ways to perceive any given situation. We can look at it however we want.
Right.
And it's critical that we understand that we acknowledge the fact that the way that we experience the world, the meaning that we assign to what happens, it's us assigning that meaning. Somebody else standing right next to us, experiencing the exact same thing, could be telling a completely different story.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
And and that's just fact. And so the quicker people are able to become aware of what it is that they're thinking and how they're perceiving their situations, and really becoming skilled at, and it is a skill to transition that perspective to, okay, I recognize I'm looking at things this way. Might I be able to change my perspective and look at it this other way? And what other way might that be? And that is a critical skill to develop.
Well, let me ask you, we talked about five categories: physical, mental, emotional, social, and then we threw in spiritual. Which of those areas seems to be the most difficult for most people?
That's a hard question to answer, simply because they're all connected. And this is the holistic piece that I was talking about. We can talk about things physically and then we can talk about mentally, but the truth of it is that when I'm sleeping well and when I've eaten well, my whole attitude, the way I think about the world, the way I perceive what's around me, my patience level, everything is different than it is when I'm tired and I'm hungry. I mean, my daughter will attest to that. She knows. She knows when dad's hungry. She's like, go eat something, because it everything changes. So there's no way to really isolate any one of those five areas, because if you're moving the needle on one, you're moving the needle on all the other ones. So it's really important to recognize that holistic, synergistic connection among those five areas if we're really going to try to move forward and be at our best.
Now, Brian, you wrote the book Begin Again, Utilize the Wisdom of Eastern and Western Ideologies to Achieve Your Full Potential. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and how it is to be utilized, and will there be a sequel to it?
Well, that's interesting because it really does fit in with what your podcast is about. That book was written most of it at a really, really tough time in my life. It was after my second divorce. I was dealing with some alcohol problems. It was it was a tough time at work. I thought that I should move, but I was scared to move because I had my daughter and so financial things. It was a really, really rough time for me. And one of the strategies that pulled me out of that, I think it played a huge role, was every morning I would get up and I would read. And I had a stack of probably 5 or 6 books. And they were books that were wisdom books. So I had, for example, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and I had a full collection of Seneca, and I had The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. He's still alive today. He's not 2,000 years old like the other two I was just saying. I had the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. It was just all these different books that gave me some wisdom, that gave me a different perspective. And I would just read a little bit from each day. And as I was reading, I had some sticky notes. I had a pad of sticky notes next to me. And if something stuck out at me, if it really hit home, if it really connected with something happening in my life, I wrote it down on the sticky note and what that was, and just a couple of little bullets with it. Well, after a while, I had a bunch of these sticky notes, and I sat down to write. And each of those essays in that book came from one of those sticky notes. Every single one of them. There are 183 essays. They're very short. They're only about a 2-minute read. Each of those essays is it started as a sticky note that was that I wrote while reading this stuff during this tough time in my life. And the essays are structured as, just here's a problem that many of us tend to encounter. Here's some information about it that's probably pretty good to know. And here's some actions that you can take, some things you can do out in your world today that you'll probably benefit from. And that's the structure of each of the essays. There are 183 because there are 366, at least on leap year, days in the year. So the design is for people to read one of the essays, go try it out for not 1, but 2 days, because they take practice. These skills, these things to implement in our lives, they take practice. Right. And there are neurological reasons for that, neuroplasticity and how the brain is wired and how habits are formed and all of that. And we can get into that if you want to. But the bottom line is that we've developed just like behavioral habits, we develop thinking habits, and we develop perceptual habits. For example, if you're not happy with your job, you can drive into the parking lot, or even when you get close to your job and you start noticing this change inside your body or inside your emotional state, or where your mind tends to go in terms of pessimism and so forth. And the opposite's true when you're going somewhere that you really like and that you really enjoy. You'll see that too. And there's a habit that forms. Those habits are very hard to break. I don't want to say that. They just take time to break. They're simple to break, in that we just need to be consistent in how we approach things and the awareness that we have and the changes we adopt. But it takes time. So the idea, read the essay, try it out for a couple of days, and then do the next one. And they're on several different subjects. So they're not like, if anybody's familiar with Ryan Holiday's book, The Daily Stoic, each month has a theme. Like everything is about this one thing. And then the next month it's about that. I've mixed them up. And there's a reason for that too. There's a thing called block learning, and then there's interleaving. Block learning is the way that Ryan Holiday does it. Okay, we're going to do the drill over and over and over and over and over. And then we'll shift to this other thing over and over and over and over. Interleaving is where we do a little bit of this, and then we do a little bit of that, and then we do a little bit of that, and we come back to this. And the research on learning shows that the interleaving tends to be more effective. So there's a method to the madness, but at the end of the day, there are 183 essays. If you read the title and it seems like something you might like, read it. And read 5 or 6 of them if you want to, whatever, dude, however it is. But just like that book, that's where it came from. And so it does mean a lot to me. And there may be a sequel. I still write it because, again, it's more personal work than it is I'm trying to put something out to the world. If the world benefits from it, I am certainly happy about that. But the process of the reading and the writing it's still it's a never ending process. There's no end. There's no destination that I'm trying to get to. It's all a process, and every single day it's a journey. And that's part of my journey is writing to process the things that I deal with.
I take it the book can be obtained on Amazon?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon in Kindle form or paperback form or hardback form, whatever your pleasure is.
So you alluded to the fact that you had your share of personal challenges, two divorces, being a single parent, problem with alcohol, several moves and career changes. What do you attribute your ability to come back from those challenges?
Well,
Jennifer Lee, a podcast supporter of ours, has just had her book, Why I Survived, released. The book is a story and memoir of dealing with dating abuse, armed robbery, and abduction, and other forms of trauma. The book is dedicated to what is inside all of us: resilience, strength, courage, hope, perseverance, and love. Jennifer pulls us into her hair raising traumatic stories and helps us understand the physical, emotional, and mental toll trauma takes on us. The book recalls four personal experiences of suspense, suspicion, and survival that ultimately leads to Jennifer's purpose of helping other survivors. Her book reminds us that we are not alone and encourages us to listen to our intuition to help us avoid pain and stay on the correct path. You will be on the edge of your seat once you read how Jennifer triumphs over her adversities and finds the gift of helping empower others to begin their healing journey by speaking her stories. You will simply not be able to put this book down after starting to read it. The reader will find words of support and knowledge you can use through Jennifer's experiences and resources throughout the book, so you know that you are never alone. The book is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook formats through Amazon. Information on the book will be listed in the podcast notes.
I'm gonna couch it in theoretical terms first, and then I'll talk about my specific part of that. Resilience is very much related to resources. And when I say resources, there are many, many. And we've talked about five: physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual.
Right.
There are others. Financial resources is another one. I mean, there are different types of resources. But the more resources we have available and the more proficient we are at using them, the more resilient we're going to be. It's really just a math equation. More resources, more resilient. So I had resources. I had, during each of those times, I had great friends. I had money coming in. There were some times when money was challenging, but during those particular times, I didn't really have too many money problems with that. Physically, I was a stuntman. That's how I made money. So I had to work out even though I was having these other problems. So I stayed physically fit. I had to pay attention to eating. Again, there were ups and downs with that too, depending on where my mental state was, but I never let it get too far out of control. Where I really went haywire was the mental and emotional side of the resources. I had a very difficult time reining in my mind and really regulating emotions. So I didn't have all the resources. It was tough, but I did at
Yeah.
least have enough resources where I was able to continue to come back. And part of it too was just a simple, it was, what do I want? I mean, the first time I didn't have a daughter, and it was, what do I want in my life? What do I want to achieve? And how do I want to move forward? And after that first divorce, I'd spent 2 years working with the Army. I really missed being a stuntman. I mean, I never stopped doing stunts during those 2 years, but I wasn't doing it full time. I wasn't doing it very often. And I missed my friends. I missed my crew. I missed my people, my tribe,
Yeah.
those are the people I grew up with. And so to get back to that was a huge help for me. It was a place where I belonged, where I was accepted, and where I thrived because I was able to do what I loved doing and what I was good at doing.
Yeah.
Then the second time, I was still with the Army. I didn't go back to stunts full time. And that took a longer time for me to deal with because I didn't have my tribe right there next to me. I had to develop other things and work in other ways. And that's really, I mean, honestly, looking back on it, it may not have been that bad a thing because one of the things that came out of it was exactly what I just said, was the habit of getting up in the morning and reading and journaling and writing. And that has been, again, it's been a lifeline for me, for sure.
Now I want to give you a little plug. You have a podcast of your own, Poking Holes in Blinders. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, poking holes in blinders was something that just came out. There's a friend of mine. His name's Colin Fallenwider. He's another stunt guy. We've been friends for years. if you've ever watched any superhero movies, you've probably seen him. He's been in just about every costume of that there is. But anyway, Colin and I, we just started having these conversations, and they would go on forever. And I was like, you know what? We should do a podcast on this, because we're seeing things eye to eye, and we're trying to put out some of this information, and we think that it would be good. So we started the podcast, Poking Holes in Blinders, with the intent of really talking about things a little bit differently, about challenging some assumptions and trying to the blinders being our rigid beliefs that we tend to walk around the world with. This is how things are. This is how I see it. This is how it is. And we want to we can't get rid of those, because that's part of just being human. Yeah. But we can poke holes in them. Give us a little bit of view of what else is outside of those. And that was where the name came from. And so Colin and I have done, I don't know, we haven't done that many episodes of it. And we're talking about, I think we're in the process of changing the name to Fall Hard, Think Deep, two stunt guys discussing the meaning of life. So we'll see where that goes. But for the moment, you can look it up as Poking Holes in Blinders.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out. Definitely. How can people contact you if they want to contact you? What's the
Through
best
the
way?
website's probably the easiest way. I mean, you can do that, or you can just send me an email directly. And if you do, definitely mention this podcast, because if you tell me that you heard me on here, I will absolutely send you a coupon code for 35% off whatever you want to get, whenever you want to get it. That's for sure. But if you go to the website, Brian Hite, BrianHite Global, GLOBAL.com, that's where you can, there's a contact sheet in there. You can put your email in, you can get the newsletter, and you can just send me an email, Brian@BrianHiteGlobal.com.
So it's BrianHiteGlobal.com.
Yep.
Okay. Lastly, what advice or words of wisdom can you give to those listening to this, struggling through their own issues, whatever they may be, to move in a better direction?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that opportunity is not rare. It doesn't come every day necessarily, but it does come frequently. And I think we often miss it. And I think we miss it for one of three reasons. I think three things need to happen for us to really recognize and take advantage of opportunity. One is just openness, being open to the world, open to our environments, open to the possibility that things may be different, and that whatever's coming into your world that day might be helpful. That openness is huge. The second is flexibility, because once we recognize this thing as possibly helpful, that means we have to be willing to change from the direction that we're going. So we're all heading somewhere. If we recognize that we need to deviate a little bit and head a different direction, we need to be flexible enough to do that, to be able to recognize the change and be able to flex. And the third thing, and this is where a lot of people hit a wall, and it is a hard thing, is the courage to make that change, because by definition, you're going to be heading into the unknown. You're going to be heading into a situation that you may not know that much about, and it's entirely possible that it may not work out the way you want it to. But we have to have the courage to take that chance, and the willingness to take the chance of failure, knowing, not believing, not thinking, knowing that we can come out of the situation better than we went into it. Meaning, if it works out the way we want it to, great, we're better off. But if it doesn't, the process and the journey itself gives you wisdom that you didn't have before, and that allows us to be better too. So that's it. Opportunities do come, but it requires openness to recognize them, flexibility to make the change, and courage to actually take that first step.
That's awesome advice. It really is. I've just never heard it said that way. That was great. I want to thank you, Brian, for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I admire your work and what you're doing, and I look forward to maybe having you back on the podcast, and I wish you all the best going forward.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I've had a great time, and I'm happy to come back whenever you'd like. Just reach out, give me a shout, and
I will.
And I will for sure come back. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Comments and suggestions for the podcast, if you want to hear any topic that maybe we haven't covered so far, you can email me at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. Our website is itsarapwithrap.com. Our Facebook group is It's a Rap with Rap. We have about 2,000 people in there. It's a private group. If you want to join, just go on Facebook and get a hold of me, and I'll invite you in. We're on Instagram. It's a Rap with Rap podcast. We're on X at Rapper, WRAPPER 130, and all the episodes are on our YouTube channel. It's a Rap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap. This podcast is being brought to you in part by the veteran-founded Hero Soap Company located in Phoenix, Arizona. In today's environment, we must be aware of the products we apply to our skin. As a two-time cancer survivor, I cannot afford to take chances, and I use these products myself. The soaps will leave you feeling clean and refreshed. All the products made by the Hero Soap Company are made in the United States with the highest quality ingredients, sourced from companies in the United States whenever possible. The products are made in small batches to ensure high quality and contain premium essential oils and fragrance. All Hero soaps are created without synthetic colorants, parabens, and sulfates that are irritating to the eyes, skin, mouth, and lungs, and are cruelty-free, meaning these products are not tested on animals. Each 5-ounce bar of soap is handmade in Phoenix, Arizona, and the body wash is available in 8 ounces with such refreshing scents as lime, bourbon, and frost. You will absolutely love this soap. Please also check out their gear for sale. All the products are reasonably priced. Being veteran-founded, the company understands the dedication and sacrifice that each family makes to serve their country. A portion of sales is donated back to charities such as Operation Finally Home, Operation Interdependence, and the Gary Sinise Foundation that are focused on helping veterans and our first responders. Over 1,000 bars have been sent to our deployed troops. Please check out their website, herosoapcompany.com, for pricing and a detailed description of all the products. Now, when ordering, please use the code RAP for a 10% discount. The company information will be listed in the podcast notes.